Great. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Face2Face 2021 conference closing, call and response. Innovative thinkers propose radical solutions. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kimberly Olson, and I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with clear glasses. My hair is brown and pulled back in a ponytail. I'm wearing my favorite blue dress with a collar and a smile on my face, as cheesy as that sounds. For those of you that are new to the Roundtable, we are a grassroots service organization working to improve and advance the state of arts ed here in New York City. We do that through advocacy, professional development, and resource sharing as well to keep our community connected. Although we're currently meeting via a virtual platform, the Roundtable would like to acknowledge that we live and work on stolen land. The place that we call New York City exists on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Canarsie, Lenape, Munsee, and Wappinger people. We'd like to give a moment of respect to them, as well as to the Black and immigrant communities, which have helped build our city that we know today. As we travel in their footsteps, we recognize that our pasts, presents, and futures are all intertwined. Thank you. I now want to share a few Zoom reminders. If you're having trouble with Zoom, please feel free to send myself, Kinsey Keck, or Megan Zhang a private message. That's our conference team. You can also refer to a Zoom one sheet that's about to be pasted into the chat. We ask that you please keep your microphone on mute unless that you are the person speaking. We also encourage you to use the chat box throughout to ask questions, connect with other participants, and share resources. The chat box and anything shared will be saved and shared in a follow-up email in the coming days, along with a recording of this event. You may notice this event does include closed captioning. To activate that setting, please click Live Transcript at the bottom of your screen. It also might be under the More button as well. From there, you'll select Show Subtitles. Please note that this call also includes live ASL interpretation throughout, and we invite you either to view as is or feel free to view in gallery view so that you're able to see all the participants. Let's see. Also, a special shout out to our sponsors without whom we would not be able to have had such a wonderful face-to-face this year. So as thank you to Disney, to National Dance Institute, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts. Wonderful. And I guess now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our Roundtable board members and our steering committee members, and our MCs for today, Shobha Kavanakudiyal and Michael Wiggins. Welcome.
Thank you, Kim. Welcome, everyone, to Call and Response. Innovative thinkers pose radical solutions. Also for joining us at the end of a very exciting conference. We have 3 arts education practitioners working in New York City who will share their insights on how individual, organizational, and community resilience impacts the field of arts education. Our speakers are Monet Freeman, Sarah Margolis, and Aisha Williams. Each of our speakers will offer their insight on a radical theory of change inspired by the 4 pillars of the Roundtable strategic plan, which are professional development, equity, access, and inclusion, advocacy for arts education, and sustainability for arts education. And Kinsey, I believe, will be pasting a link to our strategic plan, which lives on the Roundtable website in the chat box. So after we hear our speakers, we'll have time in small groups to reflect and to articulate our own theory of change and to create actionable steps for both your own personal practice as well as for the Roundtable. We want to know how we can continue to understand the needs of the field and support the field of arts education, both from an organizational and individual perspective. And I'll pass it over to Michael.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Shobha. What a joy it is to be here. Amy Harris suggested that song that started off the session. And I'm grateful for that moment of joy. It's been a really hard year. Today, my job is to help introduce the thinkers and the artists who will be on this call. I think that Cassie Thornton, who's a thinker and was a founder of an early art project called the Teaching Artists Union, said that art is the answer, no matter the question. And so I'm delighted to tell you that today we have an artist that will be following along with this session. We'll have artists Rachel and Rebecca Crouch will be creating art during our presentation. These Chicago natives are really concerned with color, texture, movement, and flow. They produce work together and I think also separately. They have an understanding of education and have worked in the field in public schools. And so understand the journeys that teaching artists are on and that arts educators are on. Their pieces are about things that are impossible and about discovering promise. The words that I've pulled from the documentation that they have on their website are music, life, limits, and change as themes in Rachel's work. And it says that the origin of Rebecca's artistic premise stemmed from the concepts of heartache, forgiveness, and new beginnings, things that resonate with me. I think they will inspire you. Meeting them has been inspiring for me, and they're going to be following and continuing along with this process, and their work will be visible and shared, and I think is part of the answer and part of the call to action. So we'll be sharing a tool to help record your answers to the prompts that Shoba has laid out. I think that comes from one of our administrators on the call. If you prefer, you can capture your ideas through artistic practice. And I think you'll get some, there'll be a moment where you get some assistance with that, or you might get some leadership from Rachel and Rebecca Crouch. And the hashtag that you should write down right now, I guess somebody should put it in the chat, is hashtag F2F 2021. So Face2Face 2021, F2F 2021, and also hashtag Radical Arts Ed, Radical Arts Ed. Those are the hashtags, and I think it is important for us to realize there are a lot of people who aren't here, but they're part of the conversation as well. So do post your thoughts and your artwork as you go along. I look to my partners to tell me if it's time for me to introduce Monet Freeman.
It sure is, Michael.
Okay, so Monet Freeman. If we were our titles, then I would be depressed. We are not our titles. We are more than that. But I'll tell you Monet Freeman's titles and designations in the world. I think of Monet Freeman as one of us, one of the people who wants the world to be transformed and is a believer in the power of arts education and a strong member of our community. Amongst titles, Monet Freeman is the education coordinator of Brooklyn Arts Council and a community organizer at Penny's Pantry. She's an arts administrator, a cultural producer, and an activist dedicated to uplifting the voices of historically marginalized artists, encouraging them to realize their full creative potential. She advocates for equal opportunity by providing artists with fundamental knowledge, strategy, and greater access to developmental resources. Monet hopes that her efforts will lead to increased economic mobility amongst those with a background in and a passion for the arts. Obviously, Monet is an artist, a singer, a multi-instrumentalist whose primary instruments of focus are piano and synthesizer. She also co-produces a radio show, which you should look for every other Sunday for a local bushwork platform called Newtown Radio, or Newton Radio. She is truly passionate about experimental innovation and admires art influenced by radical progressivism. That's the introduction. And now I will cede the field to Monet Freeman. Please welcome Monet with gestures and sounds. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you. I am Monet Freeman. I am a light-skinned Black woman with a capital B. I'm wearing a lilac pink jumpsuit. I have box braids that are about waist length that are highlighted pink and brown. I'm also wearing pink tassel earrings, and I have on pink cat eye glasses. I am presenting from my kitchen. There is a poster of John Coltrane behind me on a powder blue wall, and I'm sitting next to a full-length mirror. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm presenting on Canarsie, Munsee Lenape indigenous lands and modern-day Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. My presentation is inspired and derived from my experience working within nonprofit organizations, the impact of the COVID-19 shutdown, and my subsequent layoff last July. These circumstances taught me the value of my work as an independent community advocate. At a time when my community's cries felt unheard, I listened and learned how to address their needs by collaborating with fellow grassroots organizers. My work felt responsive to the challenges my community faced at the onset of the pandemic, challenges we continue to navigate today. The New York City Arts and Education Roundtable strategic plan presents 2 advocacy-based impact goals that I'd like to focus on. I framed the impact goals as questions because, well, they feel unanswered. Screen reads, how will funders better understand the needs of organizations and their constituents? What do funders currently believe organizations need in order to successfully operate? Do funders know their constituents well enough to anticipate their needs or respond to needs that change due to new social, political, or economic struggles? Are they willing to adapt the terms of their support to better suit the communities they represent? Screen reads, how will established institutions build strategic partnerships with other service and advocacy-based organizations related to the field? Do grassroots and other advocacy-based organizations trust institutions to fight alongside them? What impacts their ability to trust? What can established institutions do to connect with communities in a way that protects them from government intervention? The answers to these questions are not simple, nor can they be attained with step-by-step processes. Marx is famously quoted by saying, "To be radical means to grasp the root of things, the root of the systemic issue." We must develop skills of analysis to dig deeper and deeper to identify the causes for such disconnect between funders and their constituents, between institutions and grassroots organizations. After extensively contemplating this divide, I found the key distinction in the framework and intentions behind building community relationships. Eduardo Galeano, one of my favorite Latin American leftist authors, articulated my feelings quite precisely. He said, "I don't believe in charity. I believe in solidarity. Charity is vertical, so it's humiliating. It goes from the top to the bottom. Solidarity is horizontal. It respects the other and learns from the other. And I have a lot to learn from other people." I assume we've all heard the slogan, "Solidarity, not charity," chanted more frequently over the past couple of years. I'd like to illuminate the contrast between the 2 organizational mindsets, mutual aid and solidarity, and philanthropy and charity. The words are often used as synonyms, so I will use them interchangeably. Charity is handed down from the fortunate to the less fortunate. It reinforces hierarchy, control dynamics, and oppressive arrangements of some social services. Philanthropic work operates under the premise that the institution holds the power in deciding what the community needs, as well as how to provide it. Charity and philanthropy are transactional band-aids that fail to grasp the root of the matters of inequity. These transactional relationships are wrought with assumptions and a general lack of transparency. The mere existence of these institutions allows social safety nets to be non-existent. Why would people continue to push for equitable public policies if millions of institutions already solve the world's problems? Those who work for charitable institutions often fail to acknowledge that conditions of inequity were first created by the dominant culture. And over time, this dominant culture has successfully hoarded resources to further widen the gap. Mutual aid takes a much more horizontal approach, and that community members take responsibility for caring for one another. Solidarity work, unlike charity work, assumes that communities are best at determining their own needs, that they have the right to determine how, when, and if a service should be provided by organizations. Mutual aid does not wait for politicians or solely rely on writing letters to put pressure on council members, senators, and other representatives in government. Solidarity workers understand that drafting performative petitions to bureaucrats in power won't make a great enough immediate impact. So they act with urgency to build sustainable relationships within local communities. Participants in mutual aid understand that the system of hierarchy itself has created inequities that have made communities vulnerable. In mutual aid, solidarity workers make decisions based on consensus rather than authority or academic expertise. Mutual aid is based on trust and transparent communication. Mutual aid attempts to share all resources rather than hoard those of money, education, access, etc. Screen reads, "Our world and our lives have become increasingly interdependent. So when our neighbor is harmed, it affects us too. Therefore, we have to abandon outdated notions of them and us and think of our world much more in terms of a great us, a greater human family." A quote by the Dalai Lama. Solidarity is not the same as support. To experience solidarity, we must have a community of interests, shared beliefs and goals around which to unite to build sisterhood. Support can be occasional. It can be given and just as easily withdrawn. Solidarity requires sustained, ongoing commitment. A quote by Bell Hooks. Justice is defined by fairness, equitable distribution of wealth, resources, and power amongst all members of society. Equality is a state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. Justice without equality is hollow, and equality itself is the highest form of justice. So we cannot seek to attain justice without first aligning ourselves with solidarity work. When organizations approach relationship building through a charitable lens, they are not seeking long-term justice. I'll provide a couple of examples. Screen reads, "Charity work, providing arts programs for schools with greater arts funding needs, which are usually schools in lower income neighborhoods. Solidarity work, advocating for fair arts funding so that all schools have equitable resources. Solidarity work provides a long-term, justice-oriented solution." Screen reads, "Charity work, My Community Fridge Initiative, Penny's Pantry, providing food for those at greatest risk of missing a meal. Solidarity work, Penny's Pantry not intending to just be a food exchange hub, but a tool for educational liberation. I want my neighbors to be able to access and advocate for themselves, to have knowledge they may not already have access to. The root problem is that food is scarce in neighborhoods of these demographics across the borough and any borough. It's a growing trend due to capitalistic gentrifying maneuvers meant to exclude and isolate vulnerable populations. One community refrigerator cannot solve a systemic inequity, but rather highlight and help the community begin to address the root of the matter. Solidarity work, again, provides longer-term solutions that are justice-oriented. When organizations approach community relationship building from a lens of solidarity, they are equipped at revolutionizing social circumstances for the better. Lastly, I'd like to point to what I believe is key to any organization's ability to carry out goals meant to revolutionize: accountability. To whom are these organizations accountable? Who should provide criticism and analysis crucial to the success of the work? As Tim Wise so eloquently stated, charity work turns accountability inward, so that organizations providing services are ultimately only accountable to themselves and their funders. This concept rings crystal clear in my institutional work. We often spend most of our time laboring over reporting extraordinary amounts of data to funders in order to maintain financial relationships year after year after year. Wise further explains that solidarity work turns accountability outward, so that communities we serve, or as I prefer to say, work alongside, decide whether or not the work is beneficial and should continue. Once communities hold funders and institutions accountable for their work, the questions I posed at the beginning of my presentation can be answered much more easily. First, however, funders and institutions must begin to align with solidarity work and adopt practices from grassroots organizers. Screen reads, again, how will funders better understand the needs of organizations and their constituents? How will established institutions build strategic partnerships with other service and advocacy-based organizations related to the field? Screen reads, just a few of my ideas. We could have open meetings between those at the top and the bottom of the hierarchy, which provide pathways for new people to join and participate in arts administration. Funders can be more transparent about how institutions work, transparency about any money used or managed. There must be a level of humility and willingness to accept feedback and criticism about the project or institution's usefulness in the long run. And political education within the organization must be present to help expand awarenesses and to make the institution welcoming to marginalized people. These are just a few critical ways that funders and institutions can help build trust amidst this social revolutionary landscape. I urge all of you to brainstorm more methods of integration. As arts administrators, I know that you all have talent in creatively imagining new practices, and I hope that you will use those talents to push your institutions further. Push them to approach the work you do from a completely different framework than they may be used to. And ponder. As artists and arts administrators, who are we outside of our institutional affiliations? What roles do we carve out for ourselves in our local communities? And what limitations to our work are present due to institutional systems of inequity? Thank you.
Thank you, Monet. You know, what's so hard about moderating things like this is sometimes I need time to sit with it. I'm feeling so inspired and so appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I'm particularly was just this idea of not them and us, but the greater human family and this idea of community. Anyway, thank you for sharing your thoughts. It's my pleasure now to move us on and introduce the next speaker. Sarah Margolis is an educator, a theater maker, and consultant. She's the Director of Education at New York City Children's Theater, where she leads with her personal mission of engaging New York City students through accessible and inclusive theater practices. She's also an adjunct faculty member in the MA in Applied Theater program at CUNY and the MFA Performing Arts Management program at Brooklyn College. Sarah also serves as the Director of Programs at Action Play, where she curates self-advocacy focused theater, film, and music programming for and with disabled people. Sarah has served on panels and presented at many workshops on accessible arts education at conferences nationwide. She has also been a member of the steering committee and the panel's review committee for Face2Face and always shows up with a big smile, a lot of focus, and I'm honored to present Sarah Margolis.
Thank you so much. First, a quick visual description. I am a white woman with dark brown shoulder length hair. I'm wearing a light blue dress and I'm sitting on a gray couch in front of a white wall and several plants, and a mirror behind me. I am grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all today and reflect on the past year and look forward as we rebuild our lives, our arts organizations, and our practices with a central focus on accessibility. Consider for a moment. Screen reads, how do you advocate for yourself, for your students, for your colleagues, for your friends and loved ones? Note the language that I used when I introduced the concept of accessibility. I'm not asking you about the measurement of the door frame in your building or the size of the text in your PowerPoint. I'm asking you to reflect on how you interact and advocate for those around you. I want to introduce a quote from the extraordinary disabled dancer, choreographer, and speaker, Alice Shepherd, who explains this concept best. On the screen, there is a photo of Alice, a light-skinned Black woman with short, curly hair, hanging upside down from the ceiling in her wheelchair. Text reads, in my solo practice and in my work with kinetic light, access in all its complexities, it is an aesthetic in the work itself, as well as a way of building a relationship with our audience. It is an invitation to relationship, not a checklist of things to be done. So for the relationships that we hold in our lives, those students, colleagues, friends, and loved ones who came to mind, how are you normalizing asking for their access needs so that deaf and disabled individuals are not burdened with the responsibility of being the only ones to ask for accommodations? We all have access needs. Here are a couple of mine right now. I just got a new contact lens prescription, so I'm having a little trouble reading the screen. And I am 6 months pregnant and feeling super short of breath. So I know I will need to record this talk in segments. Historically, deaf and disabled individuals have needed and requested accommodations like remote working spaces, asynchronous events, automatic captions for decades. And yet our society did not normalize this level of access and support until 2020, when we all needed it during the pandemic. So here we are now. We have achieved, although not perfectly, a new level of heightened access in our working lives. So how are you, in our post-pandemic world, going to continue moving forward and upholding standards of asking people for what they need, advocating for those collective needs, and following through? The screen shows white on blue text of a quote from Suhaili Batista Carolina in her opening keynote speech of this conference. Access requires love. The future requires love. Joy requires love. All of those things have to be real and valued and respected and acknowledged and appreciated and well-resourced. Well-resourced. For the past year, I've heard the line, the budget is a value document, over and over, but I urge you, as we switch over to the new fiscal year, when you are going to build relationships through access, you need to have the accommodations that our deaf and disabled colleagues and students require for full inclusion. District 75 is the special needs district in New York City, and a quick note about language. There is nothing special about ensuring that the needs of every student in the classroom are met. District 75 serves students with disabilities, and it is the greatest joy of my work to partner with schools in that district. And when we think about the best way to serve those students, I'm excited to challenge you and myself to hire more deaf and disabled teaching artists to work in those spaces and beyond. Just think how much stronger, richer, more creative, more accessible our work will be when it is taught by deaf and disabled teaching artists who have the same lived experience as their students. On April 15th, there was a conference session moderated by Sarah Hom featuring Marilee Talkington and Nancy Rourke. The screen shows a face-to-face ad for this conference session, a blue block with their names and photos. When asked what makes them feel welcomed into a space, they shared that it is when someone asks them for their access needs first, so that the responsibility is not placed upon them. They spoke at length about the power of centering the disabled experience when creating art with disabled young people. Our District 75 students deserve this high level of programming. As a field, we are growing increasingly sensitive and thoughtful about the identities of our teaching artists representing and matching the students that we serve. And hiring deaf and disabled teaching artists is an area in which we are majorly lacking, y'all. Not only is the rate of disabled employment in New York City abysmal, it is worse in the arts. Screen reads, why are we forgetting about the A, accessibility in our EDIA plans? Why are people with disabilities being ignored in our intersectional hiring initiatives? There were 107 attendees in that Zoom session on April 15th. So I know that we as a community are invested in this concept. How are we going to make that concept a reality? As an arts manager and a leader, I am passionate about professional development and training programs. And here is the good news. There is funding in our city to hire and train deaf and disabled teaching artists to run our programming. And it is our responsibility to do so. The DOE Arts Grants for students with disabilities and the Disability Forward Fund are examples of this. There is also private foundational support available, and I would love to talk to anyone who is interested in how to apply. Through this support at New York City Children's Theater, we just hired a deaf educator this week to teach basic ASL to our entire roster of teaching artists for them to use in their classrooms across districts, not only in District 75, not only with deaf students. We need to normalize access for our student populations. We need to normalize access needs. And I recognize that this one action, this one educator is not representative of an entire community. We need to keep expanding, one step at a time. And as we identify the importance of hiring deaf and disabled individuals as teaching artists, cultural workers, executive leadership, board members, let's pause for a moment and consider our hiring practices. Is your application process, your interview process accessible? Is it coming through and from a place of building access through relationships? From the very first email exchange, from the job announcement, are you anticipating access needs and meeting them? For instance, can you send those interview questions in advance? Does your audition studio on the second floor have an elevator? Will there need to be an ASL interpreter or a job coach in the room for the interviewee to be fully present? Screen reads. And when that individual enters the room, how are you going to invite them in with loving, radical access? And speaking of interpreters and job coaches, how as a community can we remove the stigma from interdependence? Some of my work in the training of disabled artists, both at the university and nonprofit level, is to support autistic theater artists in whatever they need. This sometimes looks like prompting in the moment, co-facilitation, providing a Zoom video filter tutorial. Screen reads, we must show up and support people by recognizing them as wholly successful individuals with access needs. And we can begin by listening to the language that deaf and disabled individuals use to identify themselves and adopting that language. Screen reads. And in our own art, how can access be an aesthetic of our work? Can we as artists start from a place of accessibility as a creative challenge, as an inherent value? Instead of creating that lesson plan or that piece of theater and then tacking on access or moving through the checklist, can you start from it? Be inspired by it. If you have not seen the Reverb Theater Arts Festival produced by Roundabout Theater, I highly encourage you to stream it by May 20th. The screen shows the Reverb Theater Arts Festival logo. The way that these deaf and disabled artists not only center their lived experience in their narratives, but also use access as a form of expression is astounding. And the most important takeaway today, screen reads, access is not an end product. You're not going to find an access endpoint. You made it, you achieved it. Access is a journey, and we are all coming at it from our own places at different times, which has to be true because disability is fluid and disability status can sometimes shift rapidly. And now I urge you to look inward. What does your own activism look like? What have you been protesting, supporting, donating, researching, reading? No systems of structural oppression operate independently. So where are the intersections between what you are fighting against and ableism? Screen reads, from Patty Burns' Disability Justice, a working draft. Ableism is the system of structural oppression that places value on people's body minds. All bodies are essential and unique and have strengths and needs that must be met. We all have strengths and needs that must be met. So how are you going to meet those around you? Thank you.
Hi. I'm not sure, but I think it's me.
It is you.
Am I right?
Mm-hmm, yep.
So the chat was on fire there, and rightly so. I was taking notes. I hope you were too. If I skim through here, solidarity, not charity, sums up an expansive speech. And it sounds like a call to action to me with some specific steps. And then the idea that access is not a checklist. I think that the call to action there is to hire cultural workers who identify as people with disabilities. Amazing. So the call to action here was to provide radical solutions. I think we've got two really interesting propositions already. We're going to move on. And my job now is to thank those who've come before and to introduce, I think, our final speaker. I think I'm right. And I spoke about this person. And whenever I speak about this individual, there's an effusive reaction from those I speak to. They say, oh my, oh, wow. And I did exactly the same thing the minute after I met her a couple of years ago. So it is my pleasure to introduce Aisha Williams. Aisha Williams is Aisha Williams. Her titles in the world are that she is, I believe, Deputy Director or Director of Strategic Partnerships. I'm not sure. Deputy Director of the Laundromat Project. Whatever she is doing there, I know she's doing it well. In Laundromat Project, I'm sure you know of, they're New York-based organizations that are dedicated to making sustained investments in growing a community of multiracial, multi-generational, and multidisciplinary artists and neighbors committed to societal change by supporting their art making, community building, and leadership development. They do this work. I've seen them do it. So that is all true. She is an arts professional with over a decade of experience working with visual artists, presenting programs, and generating funding for commercial galleries and nonprofit institutions. She is a young person and what we call in the field an emerging leader, as are all of the people who have spoken today. And it is my pleasure to introduce Aisha Williams to you, and I will cede the floor. Thank you.
Thank you for having me and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aisha Williams, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a Black woman with medium brown complexion skin tone, slick back hair, a long ponytail. I'm wearing a brown dress, and I am seated in a green chair with a gray sofa and collection of pillows and plants behind me. I am joining from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, which is located on the occupied and unceded lands of the Canarsie, who are part of the Munsee Lenape. I recognize them as the original stewards of this land and pay respects to their elders past, present, and future. It is an honor to get to share some thoughts and musings with each of you today. Thank you to the Arts and Education Roundtable and Michael Wiggins for the invitation to speak. Monet, Sarah, Rachel, Rebecca, it's a privilege to be in community with each of you. And a special thank you to Kenzie for keeping us coordinated, informed, and feeling so very supported throughout the entire planning process. I want to ground us in two value propositions that will guide my presentation. They are adapted and draw inspiration from Arts and Education Roundtable and the organization where I serve as Deputy Director, the Laundromat Project. I hope that you might join me in agreement that to move the arts and education forward, we must champion the power of the arts to activate learning and change lives, and also embody love and joy as radical and essential acts of power and protest, both necessary to create the kind of world we all deserve to live in. I also want to offer two quotes that serve as true North Stars for me and guide my thinking and being. Both are from our visionary ancestors of the same namesake. Toni Cade Bambara shares, as a cultural worker who belongs to an oppressed people, my job is to make the revolution irresistible. And Toni Morrison, to weigh the future of future thoughts requires some powerfully visionary thinking. We're living through extraordinary times that call for some revolutionary visioning. Contemplations of a future or what future have taken up lots of space in our current consciousness. It has definitely taken up lots of space in mine. COVID-19 created a rupture experienced worldwide, which brought to the fore the gross extent of inequities encountered by our Black communities, our Indigenous communities, our Latinx communities, our Asian communities, our immigrant communities, our trans communities, and so many more. But these inequities are not new. Conditions have just reached a tipping point where they could no longer be ignored. Thinking about the times that we're in, I know that the arts will be essential as we move through and beyond these days. So I ask myself and you, my colleagues and peers doing the work, how can the arts, educators, and administrators help reimagine and reinvent the field in a way that best supports the communities we work with, in, and alongside? What support is needed to foster the visionary thinking required of us in these times? As I shared, I too believe art can activate learning, change lives, and create the kind of world we all deserve to live in. What are some of the radical and simple actions we can take to ensure a fertile future where our colleagues and communities feel represented and thrive? How can we as educators and administrators be best positioned to make the revolutionary and radically new way of being irresistible? I'm gonna ask you to go on a journey with me. My mother's favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz. Growing up, by convenience and proximity, I had a deep affinity for the film. I remember the feeling of anticipation waiting for the annual telecast. I had to finish all of my homework before I could start watching. I would always sit transfixed on the screen, waiting for Julie Garland to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Later in life, I learned the song by Harold Arlen and Yip Harburg was written to express hope for America under FDR's New Deal, as the nation was still suffering through the Great Depression. But the reality is, at the time of the premiere of The Wizard of Oz in 1939, Black Americans were suffering through lawfully enforced racial segregation, and Black women remained disenfranchised, denied the same rights, like the ability to vote, as their white and male peers. On a recent YouTube binge, an activity that has become more regular for me during these COVID times, I came across a recording of Patti LaBelle's rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, performed during the Women of Soul celebration in honor of the Obamas in 2014. I've always favored this version of the song, and Patti performing it in this setting was such a transcendent moment. In the White House, built by slaves, occupied by the first Black president and first lady, it was sublime. In my Patti LaBelle voice, if you can envision it, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. If a teeny weeny bird can get up and fly over the rainbow, then why, oh, why can't I? What does it mean for us to fly over the rainbow? What is on the other side? I will focus on two areas where reimagining can lead to reinvention: the interlocking topics of professional development and adversity in arts leadership. Mellon Foundation's most recent art museum staff demographic survey in 2018 found that white women comprised 56% museum leadership positions and white men 33%. Yet, POC women were only 7% and POC men even fewer at 4%. The numbers in the Arts Education Roundtable's recent strategic plan survey, while not accounting for gender, 66% of those in New York City's cultural workforce identify themselves as white. And within this membership, 63%. There have been slight increases in diversifying the field, yet it remains predominantly white despite the rich diversity reflected in New York City's population. As a Black woman, as an arts administrator, as someone who believes that art will play a critical role in New York City's post-COVID recovery, I look at the stats and ask myself, whose voices, ideas, experiences, and visions will be represented as we rebuild the world around us? We are living in such unprecedented times, a moment where we actually get to create the future together. We get to dismantle systems and old ways of being. They weren't really working that well anyhow. We get to create, reinvent, reimagine new ways of being, doing, existing, thriving together. We get to create the thing on the other side of the rainbow. A recent report released by SMU Data Art and the Wallace Foundation, The Alchemy of High-Performing Arts Organizations, found that, and I quote, organizations of color are constrained by comparatively low compensation levels and insufficient organizational capacity, which leads to difficulty recruiting high caliber talent and burnout for those who stay. This is what informs my passion for fostering a more diverse cultural workforce. Professional development. We all know that funding and support of our educators and administrators' capacity building and professional growth, particularly those of color, is hard to come by, but this support is also essential. There is high turnover in our field, but it is even more acutely felt within the community of administrators of color because there are so few of us. As raised in the SMU study, far too many of us exit due to burnout, low wages, unpaid labor, and limited opportunities for advancement to leadership roles in the field. Radical shifts in the values and giving priorities of the philanthropic sector will definitely need to occur. We must continue to advocate resolutely and unapologetically for these changes. But what are some small shifts that we can make ourselves today to help support the educators and administrators helping to shape our collective vision of the future? I've been able to advance through my career because of the support of a diverse range of mentors. Women, men, Black, white, folks have opened doors for me, invited me into spaces where I was far too often than not the only person of color. They called on me, encouraged me to share my opinion in the decision-making rooms. They invited me into those rooms. They offered me examples and guidance that I could build upon. I recognize when speaking with emerging administrators of color and peers that on the spectrum of opportunities, my story falls more in the exception. It should be the norm. How many of you serve as a mentor to a rising educator or administrator, and particularly one representative of the diversity of New York City? Or how many of you have received mentorship yourself? In its simplest form, mentorship can look like setting aside an hour out of the month to connect over Zoom or by phone and simply asking a rising professional how they're feeling about their job, what resources they might need, or troubleshooting an issue they are currently facing. For those with the ability to make budget decisions at your organization, have you considered setting aside $15 or $20 a month, or hopefully more for large organizations, in a fund to allow staff to connect with peer or mentor over coffee? Person-to-person networking is an excellent form of professional development, but given compensation considerations in the nonprofit field, my next keynote focus, can be cost prohibitive or not viewed as an option by staff. The cost of coffee in New York City adds up very quickly. One silver lining brought by the effects of COVID is that remote work and living opened up opportunities to connect virtually. These types of engagements do not require money, but do require time. For those in leadership or managerial positions, have you considered offering your staff the option to set aside time in their schedules to meet with a peer, network with someone they admire in the field, or connect with their mentor or mentee? No matter where you are along your professional journey, you can always be a mentor. Again, while we fight and advocate to bring funders along, small but radical shifts within our control can be made today to help support the advancement of educators and administrators, particularly those of color, helping to shape our collective vision of the future. Diversity in the arts leadership. How are we reshaping the fields of arts education and administration so that more people feel welcomed and valued? When drafting job applications for roles at your organizations and institutions, have you considered the simple act of removing education requirements from the list of qualifications? There are immense disparities in access to higher education amongst Black, Indigenous, and Latinx communities. How many of these folks are we excluding from consideration due to the inequities of our current systems? How many of those folks, even without a degree, have transferable skills developed through life and alternative work experiences that could more appropriately be considered regarding the role? What unconventional and even radical ways could those skills be used to reshape and reimagine traditional roles in the field? Also, how might we reconsider the relationship between staff, full-time, part-time, and contracted, and board at our respective organizations? And further to that, whose voices are reflected on our boards? At the Laundromat Project, we talk about the importance of dispelling the myth of the board that sits on high with no understanding of the work being done to support our communities and fulfill the organization's mission. Our majority POC board is incredibly tapped in, tuned in, and sensitive to the needs of our staff and the communities we work alongside. What that looks like in action are casual moments for us to connect as humans through board and staff socials. The LP's board chair casually joining a weekly staff meeting, a monthly sharing of the board's non-work related activities, projects, and initiatives that staff are engaged in and excited about. It has also looked like the co-creation between board and staff of our 3-year strategic vision. By eliminating barriers to access to those who are conventionally viewed as leaders, I hope our majority POC staff feel that their voices are valued and they recognize that leadership is something that can be attained and shared by all. Also, a special shout out to the board development happening over at Recess Art and Printed Matter. I highly suggest you check it out. When I think of a future, I know that if we make even small gestures to invest in our people, to carve spaces for them to advance and grow, we will get to the other side of the rainbow. Drawing inspiration from another ancestor, James Baldwin aptly stated, "The precise role of the artist, or myself insert, educator and administrator, then is to illuminate the darkness, blaze roads through the vast forest, so that we will not, in our doing, lose sight of its purpose, which is, after all, to make the world a more humane dwelling place." So I'll ask each of you, what do you see on the other side of the rainbow? We have been presented with an extraordinary opportunity to reshape the future. The past left much to be desired. And while I respect the value of honoring legacy and reflecting on the lessons of the past, I have my sights set solidly on what can and will be. What is your vision of the future? What steps might you take today to move towards making that a reality? And I'll close with the time by dropping in a little gift of joy from my box full of joy, which I've been collecting over the past year, which I hope will bring you joy. Thank you.
Aisha, thank you. Williams, thank you. I think we're moving into a space of reflection. Now, there is no learning without reflection. So let's use a tactic that you should all be familiar with, because there are a lot of educators on this call. And Shoba, you'll have to tell us how we can share. Is it in the chat, or are we going to let people talk? I think the first thing to do is think about what you noticed, and maybe we should take a look at the artwork.
Yeah.
Okay, let's experience the artwork together. If you can see it, if there are reactions, I think it might be good to put them in the chat. I think that might be an effective way to share your reactions. I see full, amazing beautiful and inspiring. I'm wondering about the rainbow and whether or not that was known or if it just came about.
Is that a question? No?
Yes, and it doesn't need to be answered, but I put it out there, yes. You want to answer?
The rainbow is an evergreen.
That's right.
It is always
vibrant. It gives me hope and renews my faith, says Wendy.
You know, one of the things that Aisha said, and I'm not going to quote you exactly correctly, but something to the effect of, we're living through extraordinary times that requires visualizing a revolutionary future. And that image that we're looking at, you know, inspires me to think about the possibilities of that future. And some of the things I heard today is thinking about normalizing access, solidarity, justice-oriented focus, radical shifts in values, and small shifts. So I'm feeling inspired and hopeful and energized, and I want to just thank the speakers for that.
I said Kelly put something in the chat which I feel close to. You might feel close to it too, in that watching the artwork develop as we were listening, the artwork kept changing and my relationship to the artwork kept shifting. I wonder if you had that experience. And it continues now as we watch, as we see. Yes, just like us. All right. What's happening next, I think, is that we need to get into breakout rooms. I will give a little bit of information about the genesis of this idea. I think Shobha and I and a couple of people on this call, Amy Harris, and of course the people who spoke, and the artist who was working, still at work, hard at work here, conceived of this session. And this is a material world. We live in a material world. And so we would like it to lead to changes in our in actions, changes in our reality, in our shared reality, right? So we want something to happen. I want something to happen from this specifically, in that I think three thinkers have been, at least four, including the artists, have been featured today. And I feel that they in some way, they've made this gift and will shape how it spools out in the future. But these are calls to action that, and we live in a, I don't know, we live in a celebrity culture. So maybe it's something of that. But I want to talk more to Aisha, and I want to see where Aisha is going to be talking about this more. So I would like to make sure that you follow up in terms of staying connected intellectually to this conversation and to the person who's the genesis of this idea, right? Monet is moving through the world. And I would like, if I give my way, Monet is something of this conversation is going to be held by Monet and carried forward. And you will join with Monet if that's the thing you're connected to. And Sarah's proposition as well, which is a radical and simple proposition, it will be explored further, and you want to make it real in your life. So these people are thinkers and creators and writers and talkers, and they have this is you're catching them just at the right time. So I'm hoping these conversations will flower and that they will lead to changes small and big in the work that we do. And now I hand off to Shobha and let us figure out what we do next.
Yeah, before we do that though, I want to just kind of toss this question out at the speakers. You know, you had the opportunity to create something to say, but right now also with all of us in this community, listen to the other speakers. And just curious if you could just drop a few tidbits and let us know what inspired you. What did you hear that inspired you? You all came in with your own perspectives, and I'm curious.
I'll share. This is Sarah speaking. I recognize such a strong thread between all of ours about the key to liberation really being relationships. Monet spoke about mutual aid and community relationships and the power of that. And Aisha spoke about the power of mentorship and what that means to people. And that idea really inspired me. I also wanted to share that I found myself being really present, and I realized that it was because this was access in practice. I could digest the content through video or audio or the ASL interpreter or the transcript or this incredible art. And I had this moment where it really hooked in, and I was like, yes, this is it. This is what access looks like in a really successful practice in this moment. Still not as an end product, but a really beautiful example of it.
Thank you.
Similarly to Sarah, I noticed how connected all of our presentations really were by final product, and really appreciated what small steps we offered, but kind of we're talking bigger picture and asking everyone to sort of think with us and not, I think Aisha had a quote about leadership and it being easily attained, but also shared. So just the fact that we all should be coming up with these skills to change and revolutionize together is kind of, all of it was inspiring. I loved listening to both presentations.
Thank you, Monet.
I'll just echo everything and lean into one of the big through lines for me too is the idea of self-determination through all of the different areas and ways of being, and the embodied sense of who we're centering in these conversations, I think is really important and extremely valuable, is that we are all collectively making the case for centering some individuals in a way that have not been centered before, and really hyper-focusing on the need and the reality and the possibilities of what the world will look like when we start to move that into action. So just to add a little extra on that.
Thank you. And, talking about small steps and thinking about our community, small steps are doable, and small steps by a large community are a lot of small steps and can really make a lot of steps forward, right? So I appreciate you sharing, and thank you for your thoughtfulness. I'm gonna move us along to this next part, and I hope I explain it clearly. But basically, we're gonna put everybody into breakout rooms to create actionable goals for your individual practice and the field at large. And I hope you're going into those breakout spaces as inspired as I am. We want you to walk away today with actionable goals for yourself as an arts practitioner, for your organization, and also to make suggestions for the roundtable to better understand how we can continue to support our members and the field at large. So, when you are placed in these breakout spaces, you're also going to have access. Kinsey's going to give you all access to a Jamboard link. And you're going to take notes and put your thoughts down on there. The roundtable will spend time this summer reviewing them to assess the best way we can continue to support the field. And we will also share all of the Jamboards with everyone that's here today and that attended the conference. Now, if you'd prefer to process your thoughts in a more creative way, you are also welcome to stay in the main room with Rachel and Rebecca and create art and share that with us via social media or even our chat if that's possible. So just kind of to break this down again, you're going to go into your breakout spaces, and everyone is going to make sure that everyone in that breakout space can access the Jamboard link. And then just talk. First, talk about, where we're at, where do we want to be, what will bridge that gap, how can the roundtable help, what inspired you, what questions do you have. I would recommend that you keep track of time in around 5:20. Make sure that you start writing your ideas down on the Jamboard, and we will bring you back probably around 5:35. Okay? Kinsey, do you want to give us any instructions on the Jamboard links, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, I'd love to. Really quickly, I'm just going to show everyone what this looks like. I pasted a link in the chat for you, and I'm going to screen share that document so you can see this is what it looks like. It has instructions at the top, your discussion questions. Let's say I was sorted into group number 1. So I'll click that link, and then I will open this with Google Jamboard. I don't know if you all have used one before. It's very fun and it's pretty intuitive. So it'll open up here. We have our tool. So it's split up into columns and you're able to fill this out however you like. So on the left over here, you can do a text box, or you can use my preferred version is a sticky note right here, and you can just keep adding those. You can also use a pen to circle things, check things, scratch something out, and then you can clear it here. So again, the link for that document to access your Jamboards is in the chat already, along with the discussion questions that Shobha just shared. I do want to invite anyone on the call who would like ASL interpretation in their room to send me a private message right now so that I can get you in the right spot to be supported during this time. Everyone is going to be transported to a room, but as Shobha said, if you feel like engaging with this more on an individual level or an art making level, please just join us back here in the main room. We're going to continue to watch this art be created, and we're going to listen to some music. And as well, if you have any trouble, have any questions, need any help, I'll be right here in the main room for you. You can just pop back here and we'll be here. I think that is it. So I'm just going to wait just one more moment to see if there's anybody who would like ASL interpretation in their room. Make sure that we are all sorted. We're going to be in groups of about 4 or 5. All righty. And I think we're ready. So here we go. And Scott and Sarah, nobody requested to be in a room with you. So you're welcome to just relax here.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Kinsey, can I join a room?
Absolutely.
I think I can just put myself in one.
Yeah. Here, I can assign you really quickly as well.
I would like to go into a room at some point, but I wanted to say thank you live to all those who helped, of course, and specifically to Sarah, Monet, and Aisha. Wow, and Rebecca, Rachel. The artwork is making me emotional. And a whole range of emotions. But it should all get published in one place and then make resource libraries develop around it. I really hope that is how we move forward in some way, because I've got them all and they're all bite-sized and portable propositions. I can say them now, solidarity, not charity. Right? Hire people with disabilities as cultural workers. Foster and support leadership among and let's cultivate new arts administrators of color. These are the solutions. Those 3 solutions are actionable, understandable, but they are radical, because I think people nod their heads and say, yeah. But then when you really look at it, it's like it's a whole shift, and it spins around love.
Yeah.
So for those folks who are in the room with us now, I think that most of you came back just to watch the art and experience this space together. If that's not the case, please just send me a message and I'll get you sorted into a room. I'm curious if we would like to maybe listen to some music, or do we want to keep chatting? What's this room feeling?
Just to say thank you. I will miss you all.
Thank you.
I will miss all of
you, Aisha.
I'm deeply y'all have kept me motivated. Oh my God, I have to write it. Yeah.
The work never stops.
True. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Aisha.
Shoba, what are you thinking? Shoba.
I'm just watching that. It's hypnotic watching the art.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, there we go.
You're right about your relationship changing to the art as it's being created.
It is emotional.
Yeah.
And I missed the artist's name. I would love to know. I came in late.
Hi, this is Rebecca, the artist, and Rachel.
Rachel and Rebecca.
Yeah, we're tag teaming. I have my mic muted, but I'm more than happy to talk if you guys want to chat.
Yes, I'm wondering, I'm gonna ask Shoba right now. Can Rachel and Rebecca say something to send us out, or can we have them on camera so that people can, we can truly acknowledge the art and the artists?
Yeah, no, Michael, we are planning to bring them back and show them.
Are.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
fantastic.
Out. Yeah.
Fantastic, okay.
Do you need me to get another camera so my face can be on?
I mean, I'd love to see people's faces, so.
I think people would love to see you. It's up to you though, isn't it?
It's up to you, yeah.
Oh no, that's totally fine. I'm going to, I'll just go to a different room and log in from my phone so you guys can see me. And I'll leave this one up so you can see the art too.
Great.
Fantastic.
This is Sarah speaking. I also found it so soothing with Zoom. We're usually looking at people's faces and like reading people's expressions, and there was something so soothing and comforting about watching a hand create art and just a completely different experience than what I usually have on Zoom.
Really emotional.
I'm glad you said that because I purposely just have you looking at my hand so that you can focus on the art and not like how I was moving around my room or the canvas. And it's like this abstract kind of concept that someone is there trying to like just tell the story of the conference.
Absolutely.
I will show my beautiful face later.
Oh, good.
Kenzie, can you put me in a room for a minute? I just want to see what people are talking about or hear what people are talking. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll come back.
Okay, I think everyone's back. I hope that you found this productive. And this is the beginning of something that you'll continue to think about. Thank you for taking the time to be thoughtful and to work with each other and fill out all of the Jamboards. So like I said before, we're going to share all the links with the entire conference. And the Roundtable will be reviewing them to inform the work that we're going to do as we move forward and look at next year as we start thinking about that. So with that, Michael, where are you? Should we look at some art?
Yes, I think we should. I've been looking at it and it moves me. I would like us to introduce the artist or have the artist introduce themselves and their work. How about that? I think that would be terrific.
I'm going to log in from a different device so you can see my face.
Fantastic.
Give me 30 seconds.
Yes. In the meantime, we will experience your artwork as we have been doing for a while now. I will share that my real relationship to the artwork has been transforming moment by moment as it grows. I think other people have noted that, and it's a remarkable experience. I'm remarking on it, and that is why it's remarkable. Maybe your reactions could be shared in the chat. I think that would be a fantastic thing to do if you have something to say, to be generous with your thoughts. Now is the last chance we'll have to be together in this moment. There's a request to spotlight it, and I think that's something that can be done, yes.
Trying to talk to you guys to make sure it doesn't echo. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Rebecca, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself? Because I think people should know you as an artist and also as a member of our community in terms of, we think of ourselves as educators. Yes, we are educators. Absolutely.
So because you guys are educators, my sister just stepped into an IEP meeting. Hopefully she's back before this is over. It was a meeting that was postponed from earlier today. But hi, my name is Rebecca Crouch. My sister is Rachel Crouch. We are both artists and educators. I used to be an elementary school principal for 6 years. And then I was the CEO and president of a nonprofit. So when we were talking about charity versus solidarity, it really I felt actually a little triggered because I was that person sitting in those boardrooms where the board wasn't accountable to anyone other than the funders. And I was the person making all those data charts and crunching all the numbers and begging people for money, kind of wrapped up in that system. And I was actually quite miserable doing it because I too felt that it was disingenuous. And I felt like there was a better way to work alongside the community and not impose our particular opinions and views on our constituents and the people that we purport to serve. So I've actually enjoyed thoroughly listening. While I was listening to everyone present, I was trying to capture basically from a child's point of view, what the presenters were kind of experiencing. So the artwork really demonstrates a child kind of holding the world, but these particular components of art are kind of like coming out of the world. And then of course there's a money sign, because I think as it relates to access and resources in our communities, there are pretty much limited. And I tried to capture just the different, the city landscape and the kind of, not the pain in his or her eyes, but kind of the pensiveness to just show our kids deserve more than what we are giving them. They deserve the arts, they deserve the resources, they deserve the financing. So I have some instruments, some music, and the world really kind of just symbolizes the fact that our kids deserve the world, and she's holding it. And there's all these things that pour into it that it's our job to kind of deliver and give that to children. And then, of course, I just use my colorful style and try to just capture my own kind of experiences as an educator and as an artist. If you look at my art, it's pretty much just telling our story, kind of one painting at a time, and just making it very clear and plain regarding our experiences and my experiences. Oh, I forgot to say, because I heard all the other presenters say, I am an African-American woman. I have locks with a ponytail. I have on a black t-shirt with some paint splattered all over it. I am sitting in my art studio with some paintings behind me of things that I've done. And did I capture my physical? Okay, cool.
You did. and we can feel your spirit. I'm going to hand off to Shoba. One thing I would love to have happen, and we all have a public persona and a private persona, but if there's a space where people can reach you or hire you or talk to you or connect with you, please share that in the chat. And I say that to the facilitators, but also to anybody on here that wants to continue to be part of a community, to take that risk and connect with other people. The chat is your opportunity to let people find you online and whatnot. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm handing it off to Shoba now.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, Rebecca and Rachel. I feel so lucky to have experienced this with the arts education community. And specifically, I have a lot of my students are on today, and I feel fortunate to have experienced this with them. So thank you for just sharing that beautiful piece of art. Thank you, everybody. This is the end of the conference. We have a couple of more things before you log off, but first thing is I have a whole bunch of thank yous, which is always so awkward to me over Zoom. So could you please show a lot of love in the chat box? Again, thank you to Rachel and Rebecca Crouch. We are so lucky to have had you. Thank you to our speakers, Monet Freeman, Sarah Margolis, and Aisha Williams. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to just specifically thank out Amy Harris and Tiffany Pierce, who worked with us on this. And I just have to give a lot of love to Michael Wiggins, who it is always a joy to work with him and his brilliant mind. So thank you to all of you. And then some thank yous to our staff who made this conference run so seamlessly. A big shout out to our executive director, Kim Olson, Kinsey Keck, our programming and membership manager, Melando Jones, our communications and resource manager, Megan Zong, our Face2Face conference coordinator, and my Face2Face co-chairs, Darrell Cooper, Amy Harris, Kati Kerner, and David Shukoff, and the entire conference steering committee, who were so instrumental in curating this year's conference, and we had to reimagine so much. So I am going to take the time to read each and every one of their names, and I believe Kinsey has a slide as well. So thank you to Barbara Cohen-Stratner, Kelly Donovan, Toya Lillard, Hannah Johnson-Walsh, Tracy Lester, Alexandra Lopez, Sarah Margolis, Sophia Morris-Pittman, Shakia Purple Norris, Tiffany Pierce, Tyrone Santana Copeland, and Michael Wiggins. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And a big thank you also to our sponsors who've made all of this possible. NISCA, DCLA, the National Dance Institute, and Disney. So thank you to everyone. I'm so proud of this conference and so proud of our community. And this was such a great way to start thinking about what the future is going to look like. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Kim.
Great. Thanks so much, Shobha. Now, before we conclude our event for today, I do want to share we have another special guest who has wished to share a few words on the importance of arts education. We here at the Roundtable and everybody in this Zoom knows that arts are essential. Again, arts are essential in our schools and our communities. A well-rounded education means dance, music, theater, media, and visual arts provided by certified arts teachers in partnership with cultural organizations and artists. So with that in mind, it's my pleasure to introduce the New York City Department of Education Chancellor, Misha Porter, who has recorded some remarks for us today specifically for our conference closing. So I'm going to have Kinsey pull that up for us now.
Good day, everyone. I'm thrilled that you have come together today, educators and researchers who deeply understand the transformative power of the arts, especially as we recover and reclaim the unparalleled arts legacy of our city. A rich foundation in the arts is absolutely essential to a well-rounded education. And I know this as the parent of a dancer who thrived when she got to high school and got to dance as a part of her academic experience. Both as a principal, a superintendent, and an executive superintendent, I knew how critical it was that arts were a part of the lives of our young people. For our children, their families, and all New Yorkers, we turn to the arts to reconnect with our humanity, bring us solace and joy, and empower diverse voices. The arts help us to process our emotions, engage in our culture, and preserve our history. This is why our students need these modes of expression more than ever. Artistic activities provide creative outlets that help with the healing process that our children need. In times of crisis, the arts bind us together. Art builds relationships and generates a sense of safety, connectedness, and hope. The artistic process of creating, performing, responding, and connecting directly engage students in the social emotional learning competencies. Many of our students are struggling with feelings of isolation, loss, and anger. Arts education provides opportunities to express those emotions while allowing space where all voices are valued and honored. The arts provide our students with channels to share their fears and dreams through artistic expression, which is more essential than ever for reaching and supporting our students this year. And for our arts efforts to be effective, they must connect with all of our students who come from such diverse backgrounds. We know that students thrive when they see themselves reflected in the books they read, the art they view, and the music they hear. Culturally relevant education brings learning to life for students. Learning about artists, dancers, playwrights, singers, or musicians who look like they do, who grew up like they did, can propel children to success. The arts give our students ownership of ideas, acquisition of knowledge, and responsibility for their own learning in ways that are so empowering. In dance, music, theater, visual and media arts, all of you have become more inclusive in the repertoire and canon of masterwork to explore. Our students are able to connect to the rich contributions of diverse artists who share their cultural background and language. Just to take one example, our all-in-team theater ensemble brings together students from diverse backgrounds who devise, compose, and produce an original musical speaking to issues like social justice and climate change. There are many, many such examples, and we benefit so much from our deep collaborations with New York City's cultural arts organizations. Our students benefit in ways that no other city can match. I want you to know that I'm wholeheartedly committed to continuing our collaborations with cultural partners, school leaders, parents, and advocates for the arts. Working together, I am determined to deliver continuous, rigorous, inclusive arts education, a reality to all New York City public school students. And we're not waiting until the fall. Our summarizing programs are far more ambitious than past summer schooling and will emphasize art and offer collaboration with artists and cultural partners and community-based organizations. Together, we will ensure that arts education will play a central role in our city's healing process as we bounce back from the struggles we have faced. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much to Chancellor Porter for putting those comments together for us, and also for her commitment to arts in our schools. It is a great pleasure of mine and the Roundtables to be able to advocate on behalf of our membership and our New York City students. I leave today thinking, is it so radical to envision a New York where all students have equitable access to dance, theater, music, visual arts, and media education that's supported by dedicated, sustained funding and with accountability in reporting? I think not. And that's something we're going to continue to advocate and educate on. And we know that educating policymakers and organizing our field alongside parents, students, artists, and community members is the only way that we can take action towards change. And so as we leave today, I invite you to take part in 2 action steps. One is to join us in our current advocacy action, where we are trying to make the arts a core academic subject here in New York State, where it is currently not. We're only one of 19 states where the arts are not a core academic subject. So I'll paste a link in the chat on a 30-second form that you can contact your state representatives to help us drum up some noise so that we're able to get these bills moved through in the state assembly and state senate as well. And then also I invite you, Michael shared earlier in the chat, please take a look and read, digest our list of demands for centering Black women's leadership in arts education. If you have not already, please sign on and take a look at the Aligned Actions worksheet that helps guide you as an individual and your organization and how you can be working to better center Black women's leadership within your organization and practice. So with that, I will turn it over to our Roundtable co-chair, an all-around amazing educator, human being, mother, Jennifer DeBella.
Thanks, Kim. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen DeBella. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a light-skinned person of mixed cultural heritage. I have long brown hair pulled back in a low ponytail, and I'm wearing a black top, large gold hoop earrings, and olive-colored glasses. I'm sitting in front of a virtual background of a black box theater. I'm also joining today from the unceded land of the Lenape people, also known as New Jersey. And I'm a proud co-chair of the board of directors of the Roundtable. I'm so grateful that you chose to spend time with us today and throughout these past few weeks of conference programming. I especially want to echo Kim's thanks to Chancellor Porter for the beautiful remarks. What a complex challenge and a massive opportunity it is to lead our city's school system. And we're thrilled to have Ms. Porter's incredible talent and experience at the helm. I'm heartened to know that we share a deep understanding of the transformative power of the arts and the belief that the arts are an essential part of every person's education. We know that the arts play an instrumental role of processing and healing, as we heard Chancellor Porter share with us today, and we look forward to partnering with Chancellor Porter and the entire DOE school community to continue to deliver innovative and culturally relevant arts education experiences for the extraordinary young people in our city. I also want to offer a personal special thank you to Aisha, Monet, Sarah for their beautiful, important remarks and powerful calls to action, and to Rachel and Rebecca for their gorgeous artistic response. The visual art is just so stunning. And throughout all of the sessions, all of the panels, the conference today, especially, I witnessed the reoccurring theme of radical love. The idea that our work and how we approach each person we encounter, it should be inspired by love and shared humanity is core to my practice and the values, my personal values. And I was thrilled and re-inspired to see this pop up over and over again throughout the conference. And as we close, I know that Shobha formally thanked everybody, but I wanted to just say again, a big, big, big thank you to the conference team who have all volunteered their time to support this work. The incomparable conference co-chairs, Darrell, Amy, Shobha, Kati, David, the fantastic, fantastic conference steering committee, Barbara, Kelly, Toya, Hannah, Tracy, Alexandra, Sarah, Sophia, Purple, Tiffany, Tyrone, and Michael. They have all worked so hard and thoughtfully, curated each of these sessions really carefully, and the incredible slate of programming that we all engaged in throughout the last few weeks. And I would be remiss if I didn't give an enormous shout out to the Roundtable's amazing staff, Megan, Melando, Kinsey, and Kim. They have really worked tirelessly to make sure that this conference experience was accessible, smooth, and engaging. They're amazing. We're so lucky to have them. And we hope that we can see you very, very soon. But whether we are in person or remotely, know that the Roundtable will continue to support you, the members of our dynamic and passionate arts education community, as you share your love and artistry in big and small ways throughout your practice. One last piece of logistics, it wouldn't be Arts Ed without it. We'll be sending a full conference evaluation via email, so stay tuned. And thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening.